The UneXplained Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the UneXplained Network website at unexnetwork.com. That's unexnetwork.com. It's time for the UneXplained News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the UneXplained News podcast, Margie K.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to UneXplained News. We are here every Friday evening at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And as usual, we have a really good show for you. My guest this evening is Brian J. Cano. He's a distinguished paranormal researcher, author, and creator of the History of the Paranormal Exhibit. Brian hosted the TV show Scared from 2004 to 2013 with Chris Mancuso, where they investigated several famously haunted locations. He's appeared on Most Terrifying Places in America, Haunted Collector, Paranormal Caught on Camera, The Curse of Oak Island, The UneXplained with William Shatner, and more. Welcome to the program, Brian.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. I hope you're doing very well in New York.
Hey, TGIF. I'm loving it.
Yeah. What is the weather like there?
It seems like every state I visit, it's either raining or sunny, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, it's going to change. And I feel like I've brought that home with me, that every hour the weather changes, but it's been hot.
Yes. Well, it's been hot here in Kansas City, too. Be nice to when fall gets here. That's all I could say.
I agree. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And of course, fall is my favorite time of the year for ghost hunting. What about you?
Fall is good. Fall and spring. I mean, the older I get, I don't wish to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be sweating. I don't want to be freezing. I've done that. I feel I've paid my dues, and now I just want to be comfortable. And not only just from a personal creature comfort level, I feel that if you are uncomfortable, you're not ready to connect with spirit, because you're not at zero. You're not ready. You're thinking of just your discomfort.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. When a person is doing paranormal investigations, it does turn out to be very difficult if you're, say, in a situation where there's no heat in the house, something like that. That can distort the investigation. What do you think about fall being the best time to hunt for ghosts? Is the veil thinnest during the fall?
I'm not necessarily a subscriber to that adage about the veil and the time being thinnest. And even though a lot of our friends in the Wiccan community celebrates Ostara and Letha and the harvest festivals in fall, Samhain, I'm not a subscriber. But that being said, everyone's in the mood. Everyone's mind is towards pumpkin spice and colorful leaves. And just today, I was out on the highway and I passed by a shopping center, and already there is a Spirit Halloween getting ready to open up. So
well,
it's coming. It's coming.
It's never too early for Halloween, as far as I'm concerned. Yes, actually, it's probably too late to start prepping for it now. In my view, I know a lot of people are obsessed with Halloween, and I am one of them. Brian, you've done a lot in your career. Let's go back to the time when you had your show in Staten Island, and you investigated some notorious places. What about the Danvers Mental Institution? What can you tell us about that?
Ooh, Danvers. I was just back at Danvers fairly recently, a couple of months ago, and it is now upscale condominiums. Very nice, very uppity, but the people who check in, the people who live there, I wonder if they have any idea that it used to be a mental asylum and that some horrible things went there, lobotomies and other general mistreatment.
Wow.
And it's unfortunate that Danvers, as well as many other well-known and famous haunts, have that history of just bad things, mistreatment by people, just humans being horrible to other humans.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that negative energy sort of hangs around a certain place for a reason?
I think energy is energy. I don't think energy per se has a motive, but when enough negative energy is deposited and collects at a location, there's got to be some breaking point where boom, it manifests into a haunting. Your house, my house, it's got negative energy because we have bad days, but it's not so much that we're witnessing something because of it. But an asylum, a jail, any place that's had sadness or sickness or despair, this is going to add up over time. And add to that, you light the match and throw it on the tinder when investigators go and assume the worst. And maybe a place is mildly negative, not the worst, not horrible, DEFCON 5. Their assumption of you're going to get scratched, there's demons here, they're adding their own negativity to it, and that's still a quantity.
What do you think absorbs that energy? Is it the walls? Is it the woodwork? Is there something that's absorbing it? I mean, there's a theory that objects absorb energy and then sometimes repeat it like a movie. I call it a time imprint. Do you think there's any validity to that?
That was first popularized by the stone tape theory, and as the name implies, it would happen during certain places, limestone, quartz, other minerals of such. But yes, I think it's everything. I think because everything vibrates, everything has a resonance. Just like electricity, certain things are better conductors of electricity and some things are not great. But everything, electricity can go through everything. And I think it's the same with hauntings and that energy, that certain places, the well-known haunts, might have just the right formula of building materials, perhaps something in the land, as well as the activity and the events that happen in it to create something that's on display more often than not.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the Lizzie Borden house because that's so popular.
Right.
What do you think is going on there?
Now, I couldn't tell you. Ever since the new ownership, I haven't been back. Not for any negative reason, just I haven't been. I was very close with the owners. Leanne, who passed several years ago, I would just go to visit and to hang out. And people would ask, "Oh, what'd you get? What evidence did you get?" I don't know. I'm going to visit a friend, a living friend. What's happening there now? All I really hear lately are legalities about local coffee shops or the name. They want to have axe throwing there. I don't know. I can't tell you what's going on with the people there, but with the activity, I'm of the mind that the Bordens aren't there and haven't been there for a long time, but something is. And consider how many James Bonds there have been, how many Batmen there have been. Someone else is taking on the role of Lizzie and Andrew and all the characters in there, because think of it this way. How many investigators do you have a week, a month, a year? going in there going, Lizzie, why'd you do it? Andrew, are you mad you're dead? Lizzie and Andrew aren't going to be there. They're not going to answer. They might have answered once, maybe, but I can think of no hell greater than having to be in their shoes and being compelled to answer those questions. But other spirits are like, hey, I'm here. Hi, I'm Bob. Does anyone want to talk to me? No? Hi, Bob. And eventually Bob's just tired of being ignored. So when they say, hey, Lizzie, are you here? Bob went, yes. So I think something is there.
That's
I don't necessarily
a
think
good
it's the
point.
voice.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And what you said earlier about other investigators coming in and adding to the energy or adding to that negativity, or maybe a new owners come in and they're very fearful about it, and they add to that fear. I mean, I've found several times when I'm doing investigations that the people involved are creating the problem, making it much worse. And my advice to them is to ignore the activity and don't feed it with any anger or fear. And it usually calms down. What do you say to people?
I'm a big advocate for that. When people ask me what's going on in their home, what should they do? They watch this TV show, they watch that TV show, and immediately they think, "Oh my God, I don't, it's demonic." And I say, "Look, you have to take domain of your house. If it is indeed something, because more often than not, and in the early days, you mentioned Scared on Staten Island before. After Chris and I would go back home, and we'd each detox, I guess, from the night's activities, people would ask me, oh, what do you do to cleanse yourself? I said, I don't know. I just take off my clothes, hop in the shower, and ignore it. So any spirit, if I did get an attachment, or if something followed me home and tried to get my attention, I really wouldn't be paying attention. And again, just like the Bob example, if I ignore you, more often than not, you're going to go away. Of course, this doesn't apply to the really strong or yes, demonic cases. Like there's something else at work there. But the average spirit who wants to tell their story or needs help or just wants acknowledgement, and I'm not giving it to them, well, there's plenty of people who will. So they'll go and go on to that. So I do think that there is something to be said for non-acknowledgement, avoidance. But at the same time, if it's persistent, it just does not stop. I tell people, well, it's like if you had a child, and the child walked in, threw its jacket on the floor. You would tell the child, pick that up right now and hang it up. And in your mind and in your tone, there is no discrepancy. You're not even thinking that the child will not obey, because you are the law in that house.
Mm-hmm.
So in the same way with spirit, if you say, look, you can't be here, or if you don't mind it being there, say, look, it's bedtime, I've got to sleep, you cannot bother me now. Look, we'll hang out tomorrow, I'll see you in the morning, but now, enough, that's it.
Good advice. Good advice. What is the most haunted place you've ever investigated?
The most haunted place, this goes in the favorite category. What's your favorite this, or what's your favorite that? I have a hard time picking just one, because there's different feels, there's different moods, there's different reasons that a place becomes haunted. And some of them are very negative. Some of them are big. You get Eastern State Penitentiary, you get Ohio State Reformatory or Pennhurst, these big, large places where stuff happened, and they're cool for their reasons. But then you get a place like the Knox Mansion in New York. You get the Grand Midway Hotel in Windber, Pennsylvania. You get places that are quirky, like the Winchester Mystery House.
Oh, yeah.
All different flavors, and I couldn't pick one that is the most. And even if you picked a place, there's a certain place in Rhode Island that's been getting extra attention these days, that has always been on everyone's minds and tip of their tongues, which I don't know. I don't have much to say about it, but when I went, nothing happened to me. And you know what? That's fine. It happens.
Yeah.
So when a place advertises, oh, you're definitely going to get something, or you there's no way you can't find activity here, I go, oh yeah, wait, I'll be there soon, we'll find out.
Yeah, that is. Sometimes people think that every time a person goes in to investigate a place, that the haunting is going to continue. It's going to show up, and the fact is that most of the time it doesn't. And yeah, you get disappointed, and you just move on. But that's part of being an investigator. You're waiting for the time when something does happen.
Well, you know what it is? It's if you want that same experience that you saw on TV or that you heard about someone else. Okay, sit down.
Okay, what's the cat's name?
The cat's name is Neptune.
Of course.
If you want to go on a roller coaster ride, go to an amusement park because the track is the same. You'll go up, you'll make X amount of loops, and then you'll come back to the beginning. Mm-hmm. And people feel like they want that experience because this investigator on TV saw that or did that. They're like, oh, is this the room where this person got possessed? I don't want the same experience as that other person. It doesn't feel genuine to me. I would rather have my own experience and expand the story. And I always encourage people to ignore what TV says, what the tour guide says, and what they're expecting, because every time should be unique. And sure, there'll be some repeats, and you get residual hauntings that play again and again and again. But if we're talking about intelligent, why would something intelligent do the exact same thing every time? It would get bored. It would go mad. And I think it would be just disrespectful of the memory to expect it to jump through that hoop for your entertainment.
How did you get interested in the paranormal to start with?
I was always interested in it. As a kid, I loved stories and mysteries. Back then it was called the occult. And you kind of felt like you couldn't really talk about it. It was something that you had a small group of friends and you're like, oh, I got this book. Oh, check it out. And then you started watching shows like In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy that went into the topics a little more, which was fun. And somewhere in my mind and in my personality, I've always been interested, but I went through a very skeptical period starting around college age and for many years afterward. And even when I started doing Scared on Staten Island, even up through Haunted Collector, I was very skeptical. And I think it's important to have skepticism. I don't think one should be a skeptic, because that just makes you argumentative and resistant to everything. It's like, yeah, be skeptical, but don't start off at a negative. Start everything at zero. Start in the middle and go, all right, let's see what this experience brings.
That's really good advice. I mean, there are some people who just want to be skeptical about everything and just simply don't have it in them to believe that anything is outside the norm, outside 3D, let's say. And they just shut it off. Well, they're not going to have an experience if they shut it off, right?
Not to mention, I was a skeptic, capital S. I was the skeptic of the team. And I would always have to defend myself saying, well, I'm a skeptic. I don't necessarily, I need more to believe than you do. I'm not trying to be argumentative, but as time went on, I felt that wasn't a good place to proceed from. The world is gray. It's not black and white. So there's always going to be exceptions. There's always going to be things that don't quite fit the mold. And anytime you say, okay, well, show me, that comes down to belief. Because all right, Margie, if I showed you a picture, I played an audio file for you, a video file, the major problem there is you weren't there. So what you have to do is trust me. You have to choose to believe me or not. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to belief, which is not fact. It's not truth. So in that way, skeptics are just like shutting it down before it even starts. Believers are like, yeah, I believe in everything. And it's extremes are bad. I try to stay away from extremes. Well, now, recently.
Well, that's good. That's good. I think that's a good attitude to have about it. What about full-bodied apparitions? I know those are fairly rare. I've seen a few in my lifetime. Have you seen full-bodied apparitions?
The answer to this is I don't know. I was literally just talking about this up at Fort William Henry yesterday. I was doing a series of lectures, and I told people, okay, in my 22 years doing this, I've been pushed, pulled, prodded, scratched. I've seen shadow forms. I've seen lights. I've seen mists. I've seen partial apparitions. But when it comes to full-bodied, I don't feel I have. But then again, how would I even know? It's one of those things where you could be walking down a busy city street and pass 3 of them, and you wouldn't know because you're not stopping to engage with them. You don't know if that person is real. You don't know if that is truth. And I long to have the experience where I interact with someone, and then I go into the building and said, "Oh yeah, I just talked to that nice guy with the mustache and the glasses." He's like, "Oh, what? He died in 1973," and you have that moment.
Yeah.
No, then I would know, yes, I saw a full-bodied apparition. But how do we know in our daily lives if we're crossing with spirits, if we're not on the case?
Yeah, a full-bodied, solid-looking apparition would probably be, kind of rare. Although I have seen them, and I thought, well, it was at a 10th century manor house in England.
Ooh,
and
nice.
We saw 2 children, a little boy and a little girl, dressed in period clothing, we thought. And then we went inside. We said, "Oh, that's so cool. You have these kids." They said, "We don't have any children on the property. There's nobody here." And we're like, "What?" And then another couple came up behind us, and they said they saw them as well. So that was his confirmation. Of course, no camera in hand. How many times has it happened to you that there's something really great going on and you just don't have your camera, or you forget about your camera because you're in shock?
More times than I can count. But then again, that's the thing. Rosemary Ellen Guiley told me that anecdotal evidence is still evidence. It's important, and it still adheres to the "I choose to believe you." You just told me about this story in England. I'm like, okay, yeah, I believe you. I have no reason right now. I have no reason not to. So maybe that will get passed on to someone else. I'm like, yeah, Margie saw something in England, and so it goes. So in the paranormal, we've got our quantitative research and our qualitative research, and most of it is qualitative. We're just swapping stories and trading anecdotes, whereas the quantitative, there's not a lot going on. And in the field of parapsychology, yeah, they're attempting it, but they don't necessarily want to know about ghosts. They want to talk about Psy and ESP and psychokinesis, which I think is important to lock down so that we understand maybe why we're seeing ghosts.
Yeah, that's all connected. I mean, yeah, the psychic center, if it's open, it can see everything, right?
Yeah.
All right, we are up on a break, and we'll be back right after these messages.
This September 6th through the 13th, join with like-minded souls in the experience of a lifetime on the Royal Caribbean Ovation of the Seas as we travel from Seattle to Alaska. Internationally renowned researchers, investigators, experiencers, authors, holistic healers, contactees, spiritual luminaries will sail on an extraordinary voyage of transformation. This cruise will explore UFOs, alien contact, cover-ups, ancient mysteries, the paranormal, holistic healing, and spirituality. Experience engaging lectures, one-on-one sessions, private, custom-tailored excursions, and a nightly UFO watch. The cruise is booking up fast. Go to contactatsea.com and be sure to mention the UneXplained Network when you book. That's contactatsea.com or phone 336-749-1219. That's 336-749-1219.
And we're back with the next news, and my guest this evening is Brian J. Cano. Brian, you have had a very busy life. When did you start doing investigations? What age?
Oh, age? Well, officially, I started in 2002. I've always been interested in urban exploration, so I did a lot of kicking around before that. I wouldn't call it official. I wouldn't call it investigating. I just was having some fun. And even when I was a kid, I would explore abandoned buildings and look around, and probably did things that were more dangerous than I realized.
Oh, yeah.
So it all began in 2002 with Scared on Staten Island. And that's again, where I put the official mark on it. And from that date, it's been 22 years. Sure, I feel I've been interested longer, but I'm not going to front and say, yeah, I started this when I was 5. No.
Yeah. I know some people who do that.
Yeah, they use that new math, and
yeah,
more power to them, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Now, I'm really interested in your mobile history of the paranormal exhibit. You started this in 2018. What was the impetus for that?
I was part of a local paranormal expo, and it was growing, and every year we'd get guests, we'd have speakers, and it was just go get autographs, listen to the speakers, go get autographs, listen to the speakers. And I felt, there needs to be something else. What's going to set us apart? What's going to make this different? And me, unfortunately, I'm always one who wants to educate, even if I'm not saying that I know it all, but I want us to go on that journey together. Hey, let's learn more together so we could all rise together. And that first year that I made the exhibit, it was literally just, I think, it was like a dozen foam core 24 by 36 boards on these rickety stands in one room. And it was just a horseshoe pattern where people would come in the room, they'd follow the horseshoe, they'd end up at me, we'd take a picture, we'd play a little game, and then exit through the gift shop. And the whole expo took place in a school, and most of the action was in the auditorium and the gym. My exhibit was in another part of the building, like in the back hallway, and I said, nobody's going to come back here. I'm going to be here by myself all day. But to my surprise, I didn't stop. I didn't sit down all day. That line was consistent through the exhibit and through me all day. And it showed that, okay, people are interested. They do want to know more. They just don't always know where to get it.
So this exhibit, do you have this in a vehicle, or is this something you port with you and set up when you get to the site?
People... Convention owners, they're like, oh, hey, we want to book you for our event. Oh, bring your exhibit. Like I have Ant-Man technology and I could shrink it down to this little thing and put it in my pocket. This is a 2,500 square foot museum exhibit. It's mobile.
Wow.
So there's different elements to it, and it's cumbersome. I have to rent a cargo van, drive it out to wherever it's got to go. The goal is to get to all 50 states. I've been to, I think, 12 so far. Trying to head west, it's a little bit of a challenge, because the further west you go, the things are spaced out more. So we want people to come. We want people to see it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to talk about that, because we do XCon every year in Missouri, and maybe for 2025 that would be a fun thing to have.
Never know.
What sorts of things will people see in the exhibit?
Now, the history of the paranormal mobile exhibits is based on the entire reason I curated it was because so many people get their sole education of the paranormal from the TV shows. And the TV shows are entertainment, so they don't always have time to go into the whys and the history. But the people on them know this, and they're not going to stop to say, oh, well, this is the history behind it. They're just going to get to the investigation. Now, in the exhibit, it takes you through the importance of belief. It takes you through the spiritualist movement. It takes you through old school tools, old cameras, new methods, the power of curses, technology, the advent of it, and the use for paranormal investigators these days. It takes you through all different aspects of it, with little sprinkles of ufology and cryptozoology mixed in for good measure. And it's always growing. I'm always adding things. Believe me, if I had a brick and mortar building that this is where the exhibit was, I would expand it out to everywhere and include everything. But right now, I consider it the appetizer sampler of the paranormal. There's a lot of facts in there. So when you go through, there's going to be a lot of data thrown at you. But if you leave knowing just one more name or one more concept or how something came to be, then we all grow stronger together.
I've always been interested in the older spiritualist movements, say from the 1800s, mid 1800s. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was about? What was the fad of the day?
Well, these days on an average Friday or Saturday, you've got your teams of black shirts running around haunted locations, doing investigations, or having conventions or expos. That back then in the 1800s, we were just coming out of the American Civil War, and there was a lot of death, and people were wondering, what was it for? Are they really gone? Can we contact our dear departed ones? And seances were all the rage. Spirit mediums, physical mediums, mental mediums. These people were on Friday and Saturday nights. They were patronized by the wealthy, by the importance, and they did shows, stage shows. They purported to make contact with the dead. Now, much of this started in Hydesville, New York, a little place called the Fox Sisters Homestead, where the Fox family had 3 sisters, 2 younger ones, 1 older one, Leah, Maggie, and Kate. And their house was haunted. And they learned that they could communicate with the spirit in the house by a series of knocks. They would hear knocking inside the walls, and they would knock back. It would respond. And they figured, oh, this is how we could do it. And this became known as spirit rapping. It inspired a song called Spirit Rappings. And at the time, this just blew up and became, all right, this is the new rage. Now, spiritualism didn't start with the Fox Sisters, but they're the ones who really took it to its highest point of fame. It got it out there, and they are credited with being the pioneers of it.
Interesting. I know that there were a lot of charlatans then too, but in your opinion, were any of them authentic, or do you have a way of knowing that?
I wasn't alive in the 1800s, so I couldn't tell you. However, in the history books, including the Fox Sisters, we have a lot of frauds, a lot of people who just were taking advantage of a grieving audience, both psychics, spirit photographers. We had people on the case like Harry Price, Harry Houdini, who went to these shows, who, with a careful, skeptical eye, looked and said, I see how they're doing it. There was the advent of technology. Harry Price had his lab in London, and when the X-ray was invented, he decided to pull in a psychic who purportedly always could produce ectoplasm. ectoplasm being a supposed psychomagnetheric substance that could either deliver visual messages or just was proof that there was contact with the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But conveniently, it always had to be done in either very low light or complete darkness, which obviously is suspect. These psychics often were accused of having accomplices behind a curtain, or maybe they ingested something into their sinuses and they would pull it out later. Ectoplasm is a substance. It's not the green goo that you see in Ghostbusters. It was more like a cheesecloth, and it purportedly came from an orifice. And I say an orifice because it could be anywhere there is an orifice in the body. And we'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
So Harry Price said, I'm gonna hook you up to an X-ray machine, and I'm gonna see, because he wanted to see if it was hidden anywhere inside her body. And she flipped out and said, "No, I can't. This is new." And she ran out. Her husband, her name was Marjorie. Was it Marjorie? No, I'm blanking on the name right now. But she was married to a doctor, which gave her a little bit of credibility in social standing, because he was a medical doctor and he could vouch for her.
Mm-hmm.
He ran out, calmed her down. She came back in and agreed to the X-ray, where nothing was found. But it seems very much like she went outside and got rid of the evidence. That's what I think.
Yeah. That would be suspect. There's an event they stopped doing it, but at the Vail Mansion here in Independence, Missouri. It's a very famous, huge Gothic mansion, and a long story goes with it. But they used to have a real hearse from the mid 1800s that would have been pulled by horses, and people reported that was haunted.
Mm-hmm.
Have you investigated any cases where vehicles are haunted?
There were a couple of instances on Haunted Collector where vehicles were in question as either possible literal vehicles for the activity, or something that came into contact with any of the items. And when it comes to haunted items, I think it's just orders of magnitude. You have the land that could be haunted. You could have a house that could be haunted. You could have a person that could be haunted. You could have an item that could be haunted. And right now, dolls are all the rage. Everyone's running around collecting haunted dolls. But could a car be haunted? Why not? It's just another item. And I feel like maybe it's more of a candidate, because think how emotionally connected people get to their cars.
Yes,
and when you trade it in, you feel bad. You're like, oh, thank you. Oh, you've been such a good car. Like, I hate giving you away. I know I always feel bad. I don't go as far as naming my car, but when I have to trade it in or I have to get rid of it or it breaks down, I kind of feel bad, because this was my ride. It took me on adventures. It brought me to experiences that I treasure. And that emotional displacement over time could be something.
How does a person know? I mean, people buy antiques all the time. They go to thrift stores and they pick up things that other people have owned. How do they know if there's an attachment to it or not?
I think there are those who are psychically sensitive that could detect such activity. I mean, if they're looking for it. Others might just get a sense or a feeling. Others probably won't find out until they bring it home, and then things start going haywire. Now, when Haunted Collector came out, my father watched it, and he told my mother, "All right, you are not going to yard sales anymore.
Yeah.
You're done."
Right, exactly. Now, I've had some experiences with haunted items, specifically 2 haunted dolls. One was my own baby doll that I kept until 10 years ago, when it suddenly began to move around the room on its own, change its clothes, take its clothes off, and I would just find this bizarre stuff going on. The only 2 people in the house were my husband and myself. My husband never even went in that room where I had the doll. It was my sewing room. And I decided to get rid of it, and my youngest daughter said, oh, she wanted it. She didn't care if it was haunted. she took it. I still to this day don't know exactly what was the cause of that, because nothing happened ever since I was a young child until 10 years ago with that item. Do you think that that could possibly have been a new spirit that wandered into my house and decided to inhabit the doll?
I have a counter question. Did you get any of this on video?
No,
Of course
I
not.
didn't.
Sure.
No.
Well, my doll did my taxes this year, and it was haunted.
No.
My initial reaction is that because this was your childhood doll, again, there's a lot of emotional depositing on that, both good and bad. We have our old teddy bears or blankets or security items because it makes us feel better when we're young. In a world that's a little confusing to us, just having it with you, almost like when you're older and you have that car or you have something that is of deep sentimental value to you, it holds weight, it holds energy. Now, that doesn't necessarily make it haunted, but like we said earlier, maybe there's a certain amount and then something else was deposited into it on top of it that was just enough to bring it across the threshold to showing some sort of activity. And it's like going to a college for 3.5 years, getting all the credits at this one college, and then dropping out and finishing that last class at a second college. Your degree is going to be from that second college, regardless of how much you did at the first one. So that spirit, taking advantage of all your emotional energy, says, okay, this is mine now. I'm going to use it. And that's how we see it. And if you didn't know, like say you brought it to a yard sale or something and someone else picked it up, they would just think, oh, haunted doll, but you know the history of it. You know that it was yours and it never showed anything until recently. So yeah, maybe this was a new development.
You know what? That is really good advice. I'm leaning towards that being the case entirely. That's interesting. Now, I had another case I want to tell you about.
Okay.
We purchased the house that Ginger Rogers was born in.
Really?
We rehabbed it in Independence, Missouri. We turned it into a museum. So I had to get some things that were from that time period, 1910, 1911, when she was born, to put in the room. So I fixed up her room where she was born, and I got a doll and a rocking chair and put them in there. That room, all of a sudden we realized the house is haunted. Now, I am a paranormal investigator, but I was not looking for that at all.
Right.
Just that it was Ginger Rogers and we're fixing it up. And so a lot of things happened, but it seemed to be focused on that new doll that was an antique doll and that rocking chair. And every piece of equipment we had, REM pod would go crazy, EMF meter would go crazy. I brought in other paranormal groups to study, and they all went off crazy. And then one time, I was sitting with several investigators looking into that room from the living room, and we saw a full-bodied apparition of a child in a long white dress, probably about 4 years old, a little girl, get up out of the chair and walk towards us. We all had the sense that that was the ghost of Ginger Rogers. So here we have two items that were never hers, that were brought into the house where she was born, and somehow they became something attached to them. What are your thoughts on that?
My initial reaction is usually of skepticism when someone tries to assign a famous identity to something that they don't know what it is, because it just seems very, you want to write yourself into the story. However, the way you described it, it kind of almost lends credence to a secondary theory of mine. When it comes to haunted items, you can have one of two commonalities. Either A, yes, there is energy attached to that item, be it residual or intelligent. Maybe something isn't necessarily trapped to it, but maybe likes it, adores it, keeps tabs on it. Or B, there's already pre-existing dormant energy in the location. It's not active. Nothing's going on. There's no haunting, but you bring in this secondary item and it acts as a catalyst for the pre-existing energy. It gets it all riled up. So yeah, if this was Ginger Rogers' house and she was born there, grew up there, and there's this, again, almost like your doll, that emotional energy there, but no, it's not a haunting. In comes something else that stirs up the pot. It's Mentos in a bottle of Diet Pepsi, and it displays. And maybe it was Ginger Rogers, not necessarily an intelligent spirit, but an echo of which, because that energy is now stirred up. I would be interested to see, like, if it was taken out and things died down and then brought back in to see if it would stir up again.
Yeah, we did take everything out and things died down, but the objects themselves still created havoc in storage.
Okay.
And they would still, we would still be able to get readings from them. So I got rid of them. I just.
Cool. Well, that would modify the second theory in that once said eruption happens, it's not like it just settles back into being dormant again. When a volcano erupts, yes, everything is charred around it. It doesn't just come back into the cone. So yeah, it erupted. That those items are now, I guess, irradiated with paranormal energy. We don't know what else to call it. So that, yeah, you'll be able to get readings. So now wherever you take it, there's evidence of it having been part of this flashpoint.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Brian, you've got some things coming up here. Why don't we talk about these real quick?
September is going to be busy. September is going to be exciting. September, actually, well, this is at the end of September 28th. We are doing a very haunted collector-esque event at the Ventford Hall, Gilded Age Manor in Lenox, Massachusetts. John Zaffis and I are teaming up to have a one-off special event. This is the only time we're doing it. So if you miss it, you will not only have FOMO, you're definitely going to miss out permanently.
Okay, so don't miss that one, 9/28/24. And what about this one?
This one is something that I'm really looking forward to. This is in association with the Haunted History Trail of New York State. And I'm going up to the old Montgomery County Courthouse in Fonda, New York. And we're doing a bit of a workshop. And again, like I said, I love educational events. So many investigators don't know how to research a property because honestly, it's intimidating how to look up old records, how to look up ownership or land deeds or things that would help really dig into the history of a case. We're going to have a research workshop with the county historian, and she's going to teach people what to do and demystify it, make it so that it's not so intimidating. And then in the evening, we're going to have a traditional ghost hunt.
I think it's always a good idea, and at least it's fun for me to research the property because I'm a history nut too, and I think a lot of paranormal investigators are as well. But the history can be fascinating, and also maybe give you some answers as to what is going on paranormally on the property. That's very interesting. And
Absolutely.
Wow.
And honestly, it is intimidating. Like anytime you have to deal with a county or a government, there's forms, there's things to do, and it's admittedly sometimes people just be like, oh, I heard it was haunted. Oh yeah, I heard it was Old Man Peabody. Yeah, that's good enough. Well, you should look into the records, and we're going to try to teach people that it's not so bad. So give it a shot.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I have a partner who is a research specialist. She even owns a business that just does that. And so I have learned a lot from her regarding the research part. I think it's fascinating. And you can get some corrections too. For instance, I lived in a very haunted house in Springfield, Missouri when I was a teenager. And she and I are working together on a book right now about how to research your haunted house.
Oh, great.
And so I gave her that address and I said, here you go. She discovered some things that were, we had heard things that were just stories about the place being a Civil War hospital, and things like that. Well, she found, now that house was built in 1898. It couldn't have been a Civil War hospital.
Yeah.
But it was built on an older foundation.
Okay.
So, but that brings up, a lot of interesting things. You can get facts that way rather than hearsay.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you on that point.
Not to mention, I mean, you can do some good in exonerating local legend that maybe put someone as the villain, or maybe some tragedy happened here, and find out, no, it didn't happen that way. Here is how it really went down. And it's always good to get the record straight.
Right, exactly. Now, you've been on a lot of TV shows. Are you going to be doing anything coming up here in the near future?
They are currently editing the second half of season 7 of Paranormal Caught on camera. So that will, I'm imagining that'll drop in the fall or end of the summer.
And that's a great show. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
That's really interesting, and very professional too. You show all the sides, and also debunk things. And I think that's very important, to start from that side, trying to debunk whatever the activity might be. Have you ever been on a case where there was an audible voice speaking to you that wasn't one of your team members?
Oh, definitely. I've been on several where just, and I love audibles because EVP is great. That's interesting. Oh, where'd that voice come from? But when you hear it in the room, and it seems to be coming from a specific location, and everyone turns towards it, again, how does that happen? How does that work? It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Have you ever had, say, a cat or a dog with you, and there's something paranormal going on, and they notice it?
I am not one to bring an animal on an investigation. I know people love their dogs, and they're like, oh, dogs see ghosts. Well, can the dog tell you, hey, you look at that? Because the dog will also bark at a squirrel, bark at the post office, bark at everything. I'm not a fan of animals on things, but to their credit, you've got these dogs who can hear seizures before they happen, or they can smell cancer. So they do have their uses, but that is in something that is provable and demonstrable. You can have a dog smell cancer and say, okay, you smell this, let us know. How do we know what a ghost looks like, smells like to a dog? We can't yet equate that in any way. But if anybody is working on that, hey, more power to them.
Yeah. Well, I've had my cat follow ghosts in my house. So, of course, my house is haunted. Wouldn't have it any other way, right?
Of course.
Is your house haunted?
No, my house is my safe zone. And if there's anyone here, again, like I said, when I'm home, I want to relax. I don't practice here. I don't test equipment here. This is where I just want to relax, rest, watch TV, and not be bothered.
Yeah, that's a good thought. So for your book, how can people get a hold of that?
You can get it on Amazon.com, and I'll probably get like two pennies from it. Or if you see me at an event, I usually have copies, and I could scribble on it for you. It's the first book I've written. It's right now the only book I've written. It took so long for me to get out of my own way to do it. I think I'm at a place where I know what the next book will be, because I don't want to do just more grains of sand. I don't want to do the same thing I did because I've done it already. But I found myself having the same problem I had when considering what to do for the first one. Is this going to be about a specific location? Is this going to be instructional? Like, oh, what do I do? Who am I to give anyone instructions on anything? Or who am I? Like, I don't live at that place. Someone else is probably better suited to write about a location. And I have colleagues and friends who are very prolific and are just flipping out books every month. They're like, new book, new book, new book. I will agonize over the details, but I think I finally have a topic and a concept that is mine. And as such, I have to research it carefully. So it's going to take some time. I want to do it right.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you to reveal any other information.
I have nothing to say.
You need to keep that close until the time is right.
Right.
All right, Brian, thank you so much for being a guest on the show tonight. I appreciate
thank you for having me.
It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll have you back again sometime soon.
I'd love that.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Well, this is Margie K. Another episode is complete this week, and we'll see you here again next week.